Okay, wonderful. So thank you everybody for joining. We're going to try this room, our third room in as many days, and then if this doesn't work, we'll have to move into the base medrash. That's just Hashem, and hopefully that will be quiet enough. That's one of the considerations. We don't want to disturb all the people who are listening to the shir. Baruch Hashem, there are hundreds and hundreds of people around the world who are taking this journey with us. We're just sitting here personally. There are about 300 people in the WhatsApp group, and I'm able to see that the numbers of people that are following along is absolutely staggering and remarkable. B'siyata b'shmaya, so it's a big deal. And Ashreinu, Baruch Hashem, some things have chen and mazel, and they go, and we're davening that it should just be mala moisef ha'holech, and the energy of Yosef, the energy of Chanukah. So let's jump back into Reb Nossons Hakdamah. I made a rough cheshbon calculation. It would appear that the rest of this week, as just Hashem, is going to be Hakdamah, whether it's Reb Nossons Hakdamah or just a brief outside Hakdamah that I want to give before we actually begin the Sefer, because it's going to be impossible to learn it otherwise. The Hakdamah of the spheres and the basic Hishtalshelus HaOlamos and the Shem of Hashem and so on, which we're going to get to. And then Be'ezras Hashem next week Monday we're going to actually aim to start Torah Aleph. So we have just another couple of days that people shouldn't feel rushed, and hopefully this will be the right thing to enable us to approach the Sefer properly, so that we have the right context and we can learn it b'siyata b'shmaya the right way. Jumping back into the Hakdamah, what I'd like to do actually, we're really up to the paragraph that begins when we call davar, but in the paragraph when we call davar, Reb Nosson basically gives an example of where the same concept is treated in two different lessons, which right now I don't personally feel is so important to do inside, because we're going to see those lessons. We don't need the examples. We're going to, as Hashem, see it in a few days. So if you skip to the end of that paragraph, where Reb Nosson says over here, Hiflig Eitzah, it's not really the end, it's 3/4 of the way down. Yeah, Hiflig Eitzah, Higdal Toshia, says Reb Nosson, Rabbi Nachman was Higdal Eitzah, Hifli Eitzah, he had this wondrous capacity to be Higdil Toshia, to do such a powerful thing, Bekama Drachim Shodim Chadashim Eflaim, to use the same topic like we discussed yesterday, and to bring them each time in a different context. Why? Why did he do that? Why is that necessary? Because of our great weakness spiritually. And how powerful the Yitzhahara is if we're being honest with ourselves, and as we're going to see, we can only approach the Sefer with honesty. That each and every day the Yitzhahara gets stronger. We need so many different pieces of advice. We need so many different approaches to be able to contend with this challenge, with this force that we have inside of us. Sometimes a person gets inspired by one path, by one piece of advice, or a particular avodah, through the revelation of an illumination, of a light, of a particular Torah teaching. Sometimes he doesn't get inspired by that. Sometimes it's a different teaching that brings him to life. Everything is in accordance with the particular individual, with the person, and the level that he's at, and in accordance with where the person is geologically and the time in that person's life. Says Reb Nosson, taste and see the goodness, the sweetness of Hashem. Shimu amarav, listen to His sayings, because they're incredibly pleasant. Whoever wants the real truth, and it wants to really look at himself in the proper way, in an honest way, and have mercy on himself. To think about his end, about the purpose of life, the sci-fi, and the end of that person. With what face is he coming up before HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Did we do our mission in this world? Are we thinking about the purpose for which we were sent to this place? Like each person knows in his heart and soul. And that's why I mentioned before, the Sefer is incredibly honest. Rabbi Nachman has two apparently contradictory teachings in his biographical, anecdotal teachings. One is recorded in Chaya Moharan, and the other is recorded in Sichas Ran. Rabbi Nachman says, I see already this was not adequate. So Be'ezras Hashem tomorrow we're going to try to go into the Beis Medrash if possible. Rabbi Nachman teaches in Chaya Moharan, he says, I am only able to help a person who comes and tells me what he lacks. If a person comes and tells me what he lacks, so then I'm able to help the person. But in Sichas Haran, Rabbi Nachman says, Reb Nosson says about Rabbi Nachman that the minute a person walked into his presence, the Rebbe said he knew everything about him from the top of the hair of his head, or lack thereof. Anyway, not judging, just saying I'm on my way. And to the mamash, the ankle, the heel of the person's foot. The whole person Rabbi Nachman saw. So it's a stira. What does Rabbi Nachman need the person to tell him what he lacks? Rabbi Nachman knows what a person lacks. He had this Ruach HaKodesh. He was able to tell what a person needed. And the answer, I think, of course, seems obvious in the context of Kisvei Breslov, is that it wasn't for the Rebbe. It wasn't for Rabbi Nachman. If the person walked into Rabbi Nachman's presence thinking that he had nothing to gain, says Rabbi Nachman, I can't help you. Breslov is not for you. Meaning, if you think you're there and you're just interested in another sefer that's going to give you some, pilpul, so look elsewhere. That this is not for you. If a person has a broken heart and a person knows that they're honest with themselves, they know that I'm not how I'd like to be, and at this stage of my life, whatever stage, we recognize life flows, and before we know it, time passes, and what am I doing with my life? How can I really serve Hashem be'emes? Says the Rebbe, such a person who comes with a lack, so I can help you. Says Reb Nosson, you have to look at yourself with honesty. Okay, let's take a look at the next paragraph. Gam tav and v'tireh, we should also understand and see. Ki b'chol divrei sefer hazeh yesh b'hem amkus gadol ma'od b'chol Torah v'Torah. There's tremendous depth in each and every lesson, which is going to be hard for us to see because we're going to be going through it relatively quickly. But again, each Torah you can spend months and months and months on. Rabbi Nachman wanted a person to have Bikiyas and Be'iyun in the Sefer. Right, Bikiyas is what we're going to be doing, and Be'iyun is going very deeply into it, but there's tremendous depth. Amkus l'fnimei amkus, depth within depth. Bichlal, generally, ubefrat, uprati pratas, and in each and every specific detail. V'kasha shamati mipav HaKadosh, like I heard Rabbi Nachman say himself, Zechron l'Vracha Sheb HaMachas Amar. One time Rabbi Nachman said, Ba'Torah sheli yesh amkus gadol. In my Torah there's tremendous amkus, tremendous depth. The words of the Sefer are fire. It is like a hammer that shatters iron, and it breaks into many little different pieces. What does that mean? Like we said yesterday, each Torah is an algorithm, it's a constellation. Each lesson is made up of multiple different points of illumination, dealing with many different concepts and themes and midos and psukim and mamar chazal. This is an incredibly important paragraph to understand. Says Reb Nosson, each and every lesson in this sefer, which are called Torahs, Torah Aleph, Torah Beis, Torah Gimel, and so on, hu binyan gadol. It's a great construction. It's more than Rabbi Nachman was a tzaddik and a poet and a storyteller and a dancer. So Reb Nosson speaks of Rabbi Nachman's dancing. He said anybody who didn't see Rabbi Nachman dance never saw good in his life. The man danced for hours and hours and hours. He describes this in Chaim Moharan, and he wasn't just a composer. His melodies are absolutely sublime. I say more than anything, Rabbi Nachman was an architect. An architect. He was an architect. His teachings it's architecture. And only today, like I mentioned yesterday, with modern technology where we have algorithms where you're sort of able to design models of thought and to represent them physically, can you really understand the mamish the architecture that Rabbi Nachman is building with his Sfarim. So says Reb Nosson, each teaching binyan kadosh binyan gadol is a tremendous building. Nifla v'noira is a wondrous building. V'chazak ma'od, and powerful. Banu litalpiyos is built litalpiyos mamish, like a place where people can take shade. Tel shah called painim by, like the pasuk says, a wall that everybody is able to take refuge in. Kol mikama v'kama chadarim, and it's made up of many different rooms. And we're going to see this cheder l'fnimei cheder. One room. Maybe that's why. For the Likutei Moharan, we have to go from room to room to room. It's a pella. That's a pella. I didn't trust me. That was not my machshava. It just came to me. Now I'm reading room and room and room. We're going cheder l'fnimei cheder because this is what the sefer is. Hashkachas yizbarach. That's unbelievable. That's what the sefer is, moving from room to room to room. Playtime. That's a pella. And windows. Okay, I don't know about that. Anyway, let's try to stay in the rooms, but it's going out of windows. And many different openings. Each room of thought leads to the next. And each one is intertwined with the other. And each and every room, and each reason, and concept, Hakdamah, and introduction, and Torah that's revealed in each and every lesson. Each concept, each theme, each teaching, each micro lesson has in of itself incredible depth. And the more that the lesson reveals itself and unfurls and unfolds and blossoms like a rose, and has even more depth, which like water covers the sea. Says Reb Nosson, the wise person, Yavan Ashura, will be able to understand it. Each time that he goes from palace to palace, from room to room, and from each new nuance of an idea within an idea, you have to look back, you have to look behind you. It was a journey. And then you look back in the lesson to the earlier concepts, and then retroactively you're able to understand the sweetness and the depth of Rabbi Nachman's words, Achras Davar Merishisai. You could understand the beginning of the lesson from the end of the lesson, Verishisai Ma'achrisai, and the end of the lesson from the beginning of the lesson. Kulei Kasher U'Mechuber V'Nat B'Seifa B'Tchilasa B'Seifa. The whole thing is bound up together. First, Rabbi Nachman brings one idea, connects it to the second. Then he connects the second to a third, and then the third to the first, and the first to the second, and each binding and each new system of linkages, which we called yesterday bechinas, and one of the Yidden had beautiful explained that what does it mean? A bechina is a test. It's a test of the relationships, as he said, between teacher and student. That's what it means, and that's what I was trying to get to yesterday. I know I didn't say it properly. It's a test between how strong is the relationship, right? And so all the links between the concepts are called bechinas. Rabbi Nachman is building structures using these links that he's revealing between concepts that you'd never think are connected, psukim that you don't see any kasher between them. And that's a binyan. Kulai kasher u'mechuber. Everything is bound up, the beginning with the end with the beginning, and in the middle, and on all the sides. Says Reb Nosson, have fun. We're sitting now in a playroom, Baruch Hashem. This is mamash a playroom. This Likutei is, Rabbi Nachman played with the Torah. It's a shashua. It's a plaything, it's a delight. He says, Yeshoitet hamayan, take a journey, travel like a boat on the ocean. And your consciousness will increase. Your consciousness will absolutely be expanded. And this is more true generally speaking. You take a step back from the lesson, and that's what I mentioned yesterday, that each Torah has a character, it has a personality. You take a step back, and after all the psukim, and after all the mamar chazal, and all the concepts, and the themes, and the ideas, and the guidance, and the encouragement, and you see, this is an entity. Like I expect one day to meet Torah Samach Vav, like to meet it. It's like a malach. It's like to me, it's a being. It's a real thing that exists in my mind, in my heart. Not just Torah Samach Vav. You said an example. Torah Yud is a being. Torah Vav, Torah Lamed Gimel, Torah Kuf Yud Beis. These are entities. So a person will take a step back and see the totality of the lesson and appreciate that. And he says, you, the person who's coming to learn the Sefer now, needs to understand. Sometimes Rabbi Nachman will bring a raya, because the whole Sefer is Rabbi Nachman introducing brand new ideas, so he's going to need to back them up textually, which is what he does again and again and again. And it seems that he's bringing one proof, in an incredibly sweet and deep and beautiful way. But by looking at it, you just look at it, it looks like he brought one proof to this concept. This is the way that Rabbi Nachman speaks in this Sefer. He keeps on using this word ki, and ki is a qualifier, right? This is true, ki, because, right, even though ki can mean four things, as Rashi tells us a number of times, but in this context it means because, he's giving a reason. So you think that that's just one reason. But it seems like he's bringing one raya, but you have to go on. Again, this is for those who are learning the Sefer B'Iyan. But if you really look at it carefully, he's bringing a number of proofs. Sometimes there's one proof textually, but then within the text, there's a theoretical or a philosophical or a theological or a mystical proof baked in as well. Rabbi Nachman intends it on numerous levels. Hopefully we'll see this, B'ezras Hashem, as we go through the Sefer. And each one of those proofs is bound up with the next. We should not divide them. But they're wondrous. They're absolutely wondrous. And each one is bound up with and connected to the next. I love this. Reb Nosson says, because of the depth of every single word in the Sefer, I really should have written after every single word the word v'doik. Look at this carefully. Or v'havin. Really understand this, right? Or ayin heitev. Like every word in the Sefer deserves this, because really you can't just go through it as quickly as we're going to be going through it, although you can, because we will. And Rabbi Nachman wants us to do that too. But to learn the Sefer properly, this will just open it up and show you how precious it is and how well worth your time it is to really make another Sefer if you can, maybe on Shabbos, to go back and take a lesson that spoke to you. There are so many resources, there are so many Svarim in Hebrew and in English that are giving Perushim and Shiurim and Iyun and so on to really focus on it. But a person really ought to stop after every single word and be ma'ayin, v'doik, v'havin, all these different phrases that are guiding the ma'ayin sheyasem ein iyunai sham lahaven etiv, to really understand it. Says Reb Nosson, but I saw ki im kain, if I would do this, I would have to write it after every word, because where are you going to decide? Because of the sweetness and the depth, in every word, the depth is such that no amount of ayin heitiv and v'daik is going to help anyway. I mean, it's so deep that just let it be. All right, and if a person will go into it, they'll go into it, and if not, they won't. Kain says Reb Nosson, chadalti es iti. I held back my pen, umanati es atzmi, and I prevented myself milichtav shum lashon milashenes hanal. So you almost never find, even though sometimes you almost never find. And he says rak lefa'amim aliitim erchaykos. Sometimes to very distant places, nishmat bitachas hakol mes ezel lashon v'zeh. Right, it slipped out of my pen, just a little bit. Ayin heitiv v'doik v'ma'ayin be'emes. But a person that looks at this carefully, mishi yesh le moyach bekadkadei. This is one of the preconditions to learning Likutei. You have to have a brain in your skull. Doesn't matter what kind of brain, but it has to be an active brain, a willingness to focus and to listen. So he says such a person, Yavin me'ilav amkus advarim, will just understand it himself. Sheim rechavim va'amukim minayam, that are deep and wide as the ocean, gavoyim mishamayim, as high as the heavens, va'amak mitayim, and deeper than the depth. Someone who wants to taste the honey of these sweet words, very carefully, to really understand what the Rebbe is saying, to the extent that you can. And again, the Sefer is relevant for every single person, no matter what madriga we said yesterday, the greatest tzaddik, mekubal, talmid chacham, to the most simple person. Ashrei Adam Matzah Chachma. How fortunate are we that we have found wisdom. V'Adam Yafik Tvuna, and a person has discovered Tvuna lahavin heitev pashtius hadavar me'elu, just to understand them simply. Hana'emarim b'Sefer HaKadosh Hazeh, that are said in this holy Sefer. I'm just going to make a bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam shehakol nihiyeh b'dvarei. Amen. V'af al pikein hu milsa d'shavi l'chulhu, because it's something that's relevant for everyone. Even a person who has a difficult time finding it possible for him to contemplate abstract things. Don't worry. You're going to find practical advice in the Sefer B'divrei Sefer HaKadosh Hazeh B'divrei Eitzos HaKadoshos, the holy pieces of advice, v'hamusar nifla, and the incredible guidance hayotzei mikol Torah v'Torah that comes out from each lesson. Like a Kodesh Baruch will give that person siyata d'shmaya lahavi kavana hapshuta shehichnes Rabbeinu. And to understand just the simple understanding that Rabbi Nachman put in B'Torah Hakdamah, ki be'emes, but in truth. Each and every word in the Sefer is a expression of a wondrous hasaga, a spiritual perception, like a person would imagine rising up in aliyas neshama to a higher realm, and just the neshama absorbing information that's beyond words and beyond letters and beyond concepts, like we said yesterday, beyond psukim. It's just seicha. Like we can't even imagine such a thing. That's what Likutei Moharan is. It's that put into words. And we're going to see that ultimately when you take a step back, like I mentioned now a few times, you feel that. You understand that. You sense that. The deepest words, because the Torah has pshat, but each and every Torah has remez and soid. V'chol kis, and here he says, v'chol kisvei arizal, and the entire kisvei ari, u'maimrei hazayar kadosh, and the whole zayar, v'tikunim, and all the tikunei zayar, v'chol darchei kabbalah kadosha, and the entire corpus of Kabbalah, kulam ke'echad klulim b'divrei hasefer hakadosh hazeh. The entire corpus of Nister, from the Zayar Kadosh to the Tikunim to the Kisvei Ari, and all the other Mikubalim, the Ramak, and the Rashash, the Ramchal, and everybody else, is in this Sefer. As we're going to see, in certain lessons it's explicit, in certain lessons it's implicit, and you have to look. And Chaim Moran, Rabbi Nachman, revealed a little bit more about the Kabbalistic depth that's behind each and every lesson, but generally speaking, each of the major lessons focuses on one of the clusters of the Kabbalistic intentions that's revealed by the Arizal and Sefer Priyetz Chaim and the other Svarim, Shar Kavanas, for the various Yomim Tovim or the mitzvahs. For example, Lamed Gimel, I think you might even bring an example. Lamed Gimel, as we're going to learn, 33, is the site Kavanas Tefillin, right? Is the Kabbalistic intentions behind Tefillin, and the whole lesson is built on those. Torah Vav, very famously, some of those who know, is Soy Kavanas Elul, right? The whole thing is the Kabbalistic intentions for Elul, the Shem Kasa and the Shem Sag and Yimich Pshuta, the Kabbal Shavim, and Anoiseh B'Yam Derech. That's all Torah Vav. And each of the lessons is based, or the whole structure, on the different clusters of the Kavanas Ari. Kashar einenu ra'u v'loy zar, like our eyes see, and apparently, says Reb Nosson, nobody else does because people are blind. Asher pasach einenu, Hashem opened our eyes. Or over here it's referring to Rabbi Nachman. Asher pasach einenu v'hera lanu, Rabbi Nachman showed us l'fa'amim ketipa min yam, just a drop in the ocean, mi'otzim kavanah, of his actual intention. V'kasher ruhu b'seicha sefer, the parkim me'izim ramazim ba'alma, as it's actually brought explicitly in the sefer in a number of places. Ki kol Torah v'Torah kolol mi pardes. Each Torah is a microcosm of the whole corpus of Torah Bechlal, which has Pshat, Remez, Drush, Soid. Ubechol echad ve'echad imaderech Pshat, whether it's Pshat, imaderech Remez, b'kulam eish b'ma'am, because gadol nifla v'ner ma'od, wondrous depth. Ach ikar kavanas ha'akadosha. But again, the real intention of the Rebbe is not the Kabbalistic, meditative, experiential, intellectual depth. The main focus is who perish ha'pashat, is just to understand something that I can practically take into my own life. That's the main thing. Remember we learned yesterday? To get close to Hashem. That's the main thing. Otherwise you can learn and have a beautiful intellectual experience and it doesn't change a person. Rabbi Nachman meant for this to set our hearts on fire. Mamish. Ki loy ha-midrash hu ha-ikar. Because the main thing isn't the learning. Ela ha-maisa, but the main thing is the maisa. Like we've learned many times, shekol ikar kavanas ha'akdosha b'chol Torah v'Torah. The main intention in all of his lessons, shegila, that he revealed b'chol dibur v'dibur sheyatzim mipiv hakodesh, every word he said, ha'kol ha'yarak v'shvil azakvis as Yisrael ha'aviyam l'dei ma'isa yishara, is just to bring Am Yisrael in the right way, l'ramiz lahem, to hint to them, mirachayik, from a lofty place, from on top of a mountain, from Everest. Rabbi Nachman's calling out to us, and he's hinting to us the path, how to rise, how to ascend, how to transcend. Umikara, whether from distance or from up close. L'lohayris lahem, to reveal to them and to teach to them. Eitzes v'tachbulais, to teach to them advice. V'tachbulis hamukas, and deep strategies. V'neflois and wondrous strategies, l'skariv l'Hashem is baruch, to come close to Hashem, mikol makim shehu, no matter where you're at on your journey, it makes no difference. Kasher yira haroya be'enav, like the person with eyes will see, with his own eyes. Im yirtze, but again, this caveat, im yirtze l'histakel be'ena emes la'amidai. You have to be willing to look at this honestly. That means dropping all ideological restrictions. It makes no difference which. This is about honestly approaching this with an open heart and an open mind. This is not Bresler Chasidus. This is not Rabbi Nachman. It makes no difference what your Chasidus is, or what your affiliation is, or what hashkafa you're from. Again, we need to strip this experience from all of that. Leave that at the door. It's irrelevant. Rabbi Nachman is a Am Yisrael tzaddik. He's a Moshe Rabbeinu tzaddik. He's a Reb Shimon Bar Yochai tzaddik. So you can stay with whatever affiliation you have. Let's open our hearts to what the Rebbe is telling us. If you want to look at it honestly. His whole focus, like he expressed many times, was simply that a person should try as best as he or she can to focus on each and every lesson and to try to take practical advice. And then turn it into a prayer, as Reb Nosson did. I was just flipping through the Likutei Tefillos yesterday. Somebody sent me a little piece from the Likutei Tefillos translated to English. He said, "Can you help me find this?" So, nervous this person will hear this shir, but even if he hears it, it's okay, because I'm just saying the truth. And I thought to myself, Kavalt, wow, this person, mamish, Likutei Tefillos, this is amazing things. That's not the kind of person I thought, would be looking at Likutei Tefillos. Amazing. And I start opening Likutei Tefillos and I'm flipping through it. I'm trying to find it. I can't even look because I opened Likutei Tefillos again. I haven't opened Likutei Tefillos in a while, and I used to have a daily thing with it. And mamish, my heart's going out. I want to say every tefillah. I want to say every word, and I was just so excited about it. And so I sent this person a whole list of the different tefillahs that I was able to find, both through the Mafteach and also, just flipping through it, looking through it, different tefillahs on this Inyan. And the response is, he goes, I need something very concise. It's just for a wedding booklet, whatever. Meaning, it was just like a practical thing. He needed a prayer for Reb Nosson. I say, Likutei Tefillos. It's not something concise for a booklet. It's to say, it's mamish to say. Like Reb Nosson's tefillahs, he wrote them that we should say them, to really say them. Likutei Tefillos. I'm telling you, the world is blind. And from my perspective, the world is blind. How could there be Likutei Tefillos in the world and people don't care about it? There's no sefer like this in Yiddishkeit. It's not another Pirush on the Chumash, and even that is holy and special. Likutei Tefillos. It's 500 pages of 210 glorious, glorious prayers that wake up your heart. They mamish wake up your heart. Try it. Say it in Hebrew. Say it in English. Likutei Tefillos, right? So Rabbi Nachman says Reb Nosson, you should daven them. Pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and spread yourself out before Hashem, and to really try to put this into action. Says Reb Nosson, I rely on Hashem. Whoever will focus his eye and his heart properly to the holy words that are in this book, that person's heart will be inflamed. And that person's eyes will relatively open, even though they were open before, but they will mamish open. Your eyes will open. And will yearn, and will have absolute longing to come back to Hashem in a real way, maybe the most real way in our lives. Until that person will return in truth. This might be the most fundamentally powerful care tool. Like this. If we would just take this sefer, or all the different strategies, take this sefer, it has the power in it. It has the power in it. Rabbi Nachman is arguably the greatest Mekarev in history. Arguably. You look at what Uman does, just 2-day experience. How many people I met, how many people some of us met, flip their whole life, 2 days in Uman, even without opening the sefer. And then hopefully they'll, put some meat on the bone, so to speak. And after the experience, they'll learn and they'll actually do the thing, What a Mekarev. What a Mekarev Levavis L'Avinu Shabashamayim for hundreds of years. And it's growing and growing and growing and not shrinking and shrinking. And we're sitting in London in 2025 and there are 20 plus people, whatever it is, and 300 people and people waking up, and they're not Hasidim. They don't have to be Hasidim. That's not the point. You don't have to become a Breslover. You're not supposed to. I think it takes away. I don't like telling people I'm a Breslover Chassid. If they ask me what I am, I'm a Yid. My personal headquarters is in Rabbi Nachman. Everybody has to have a headquarters. But it's not about that. It's really, again, I said yesterday, genuinely not about that at all. It's just about Nishmas Yisrael, in its purest, most sublime, most essential form. Nishmas Yisrael. He says, your heart will open, you'll come back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. with all of his heart, nafshai, and his soul, uma'aydai, and then if you'd like to support our holy work with your money as well, also uma'aydai, right? V'leiv chazak kitsuri yazis mimakaymai, and a person's leiv chazak, like a strong and stubborn heart, kitsur, like a rock, yazis mimakaymai, will be just dislodged. Like mamish dislodged in a holy way. In Evan, if it's a stone, who, like it says in the pasuk, mayach will melt. In Barzel, if it's iron or mitpotzetz, it will shatter. Rabbi Menachem himself said, if a person approaches this in a vulnerable way, recognizing his lack, his whole entire heart will be undone. And that person will become a Bal Tshuva. Ube'emes, and here we're coming to the end of the Hakdamah. Ube'emes hu min hanimna, it would be impossible. It would be impossible to describe and praise this wondrous volume. We didn't even start to talk about the Mechaber, we're talking about the Sefer. Right? Certainly, to speak about who this person was, our master, our Rebbe, our guide, you can only be silent when we think about him. And says Reb Nosson, all the more so, we know the great machlokes, the great opposition, many have risen up against us. Chinam, aloi davar, falsely, setting up a straw man. Rabbi Nachman says in Sichas Ran, he says, they're not arguing against me. They imagine such a person that does this and this, and they're arguing against that person. I will stand with them, and I will also oppose such a person. It's all sheker v'chazav. It was all lashon hara mitchila v'atzayv. Not going to get now into the history of how it all happened with the shpala zayda and slander that was told to him, and jealousy and many other things mixed in. And obviously, Rabbi Nachman revealed, as we're going to see in the Sefer again and again, that machlokes between tzaddikim is min hashamayim, and it's purposeful. It has utility. It was to protect the Rebbe. It was to enable the Rebbe to do what he needed to do in the world. And the Satan was mekatrik in that way, but at the same time, he still managed to accomplish what he accomplished. But there was tremendous, tremendous opposition against Rabbi Nachman, and maybe even more so against Reb Nosson from a certain Chasidus, which just so happens to be is not around anymore today. So we know about this. And because of that, we have to put a muzzle on our mouths. We have to withhold ourselves. And we have to hold ourselves back from being marich, from speaking in lengthy ways about to praise his holiness, and his ascetic removal from this worldliness. Utmimusai, and his wholesomeness, v'tzidkasai, and his righteousness, v'anbesandusai be'emes, and his true humility. Ubemekayim gedulasai v'chachmasai arav v'anisa, and in the place of his gedula and his wisdom that's lofty and elevated, that he had absolute mastery over the entire Torah, Benigla, Venister, B'yam HaTalmud, and the entire ocean of the Talmud, and in every single secret of Kabbalah, Kol Razle, honestly, no secret escaped him, and nothing hidden astounded him. Despite that, and again, this is not just a Talmud that's speaking in grand terms hagiographically about his Rebbe. There's proof is in the pudding. Take a look at Sefer Amidas, for example, that Rabbi Nachman wrote before he was bar mitzvah, before he started his Chasidus. Sefer Amidas is one of the Sfarim from Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman primarily has, even though there were really two others that were hidden, the burnt Sefer and the hidden Sefer. We don't have time now to get into the whole context. Likutei is the lowest of those three. There was the Sefer Nignaz, the hidden Sefer that's hidden away, that Rabbi Nachman said Mashiach will teach. There's Sefer Nisraf, the burnt Sefer that Rabbi Nachman burnt, and then there's Sefer Likutei, which is the lowest in those three, but there are two others from Rabbeinu HaKadosh, which is Sipurei Maisias, which is Rabbi Nachman's wondrous stories, and the Sefer Amidas, which is also called Sefer Aleph Beis, that Rabbi Nachman published before he was 13 years old. This Sefer is a collection of aphorisms. Aphorisms are one-line teachings. Skulas, pieces of advice, guidance, and seemingly brand new ideas that don't seem to have any makar. They're not brought with any footnotes. Rabbi Nachman just published this collection, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these one-liners. You know who wrote Mara Mekaimus on the Sefer when he was in his, I think, 60s or 70s? Who wrote Mara Mekaimus showing how Rabbi Nachman got each and every line from the deepest, most far-flung places in the entire corpus of the Midrashic literature and the entire Talmud Bavli Yerushalmi and the entire Kisvei Ari and the Zohar, but mining the depth in such a way of wisdom and absolute wonder. Before 13, Reb Tzadok HaKohen Lublin. Reb Tzadok HaKohen Lublin, that in the yeshivas they'll learn all of his svarim because he was known to be a Talmud Chacham. Him and the Sfas Emes, those are two chassidus they'll learn because they also wrote on Nigleina. What they don't know is that the Sifrei Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Nachman, never left Reb Tzadok's table. Do you know that? Do you know that the Sfarim of Rabbi Nachman were constantly on Reb Tzadok's table? Reb Tzadok HaKohen wrote Mara Mekoimos on Kol Atar Gula, what Rabbi Nachman wrote before his bar mitzvah. So the proof is in the pudding. It's not just Reb Nosson, you have to take his word for it. Puk Chazi, you can look, you can see it. You can watch. And says Reb Nosson, despite this, Sham anu moitzin an v'sanusa, but you find his incredible humility. Ha-pashut, he was a simple person. Ha-savlon, he was a patient person. Va-olav, he was an embarrassed person because he went through incredible shame. He knew who he was. How many chassidim do you think Rabbi Nachman had at the peak of his life, if we didn't mention this already? The last Rosh Hashanah. 800. To put into context, there are between 50 and 60,000 people today. And I promise you, Chevra, I think I said this already, we are before the beginning with this inyan of Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Nothing started yet. We are pioneers, Sheba pioneers of this. I promise you. Mark my words. Mark my words. Nothing has begun. This Sefer is going to wake up Am Yisrael. Nothing has begun. The Satan is still blinding people's eyes from this. Sipur Maisius, Likutei Tefillah, Sefer Amidas, Likutei Eitzes, Likutei Halachas. And everybody's wandering around, like feeling in the dark, like, oh, we have so many problems in our communities, and everybody's so robotic and by rote, and how are people going to get inspired? And it's like, hello, knock, knock, here we go. We have this whole world of Torah literature. So what it requires us to do is to strip away our preconceived notions of what we think Breslov is. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu also sent Baruch Hashem some holy hippelach nanach dumping on vans that destroyed the whole name of Breslov forever. Okay, good. It's also true. And they're also holy, and they also have their place, and they also did a tremendous amount of good in printing all the Sfarim very cheaply. And they also have their makom, like my father says, who knows where they would be if not there. Okay, but it also did tarnish the reputation of Breslov. Fine. But the point is, if we can look past this and actually sit with humility at the Sefer, it's game over for the Yetzer Hara. It's game over. It's Mashiach times. Mashiach times. He was an olive. B'samim, b'masav, and he was very yashar. He was simple, straightforward. Oived es Hashem b'mesiras nefesh nifle. He served Hashem with absolute mesiras nefesh. Yomi lo yishbais. He didn't rest in the day. He didn't rest in the night. Lo yishkot v'lo yanuach. He didn't cease or stop or rest. Mihavidasi yisbarach b'chachma v'asaga gedola v'naira ma'oid ma'oid. In his wondrous thoughts and spiritual aliyahs. Kasher einechem techazena meisharim. Like your eyes will see. The Sefer HaKadosh has that. You'll see it. Kikol ma'ayin, because every person who sits in front of the Sefer, asher yasim liba l'dvarim elu, and will pay attention to these words, yishbait b'tzedek, will be able to judge and decide for themselves. She'i efshel hasik dvarim ke'elim ikarim aleya. Unbelievable. Karis malaya. These are not words of Torah you draw down on a full stomach, right? Meaning, unless you're a person who's absolutely refined and removed from olam hazeh, you don't become a conduit for teachings like this. This is a person who is removed. And just to speak about the embarrassment, the shame, Reb Nosson speaks about in Likutei Tefillah. He writes a letter to the Rebbe of Savran, that's who was Reb Nosson, and he writes a letter to him. You have to see this letter, pages and pages and pages, begging him, tell your Hasidim to stop burning this Sefer, please. They're burning the Sefer. Did they ever look inside of it? It's a pele, what these people had to go through. Imagine the hurt. You know what I would feel? Me, humble me, that I'm just nothing. I have nothing to do with this Sefer. I have nothing more to do with this Sefer than anybody else in Klal Yisrael. What I would feel if somebody burnt this Sefer, if somebody burnt any Sefer, but this Sefer, this is what they had to go through and more. Do you know that particular Chassidus, so I'm getting into it now, just to give you a little bit of the context, very important before going into the Sefer. Some people start from Torah Aleph and you learn it like it's another Sefer. It's not another Sefer, and you can't just look in Torah Aleph. Because it's bound up with the whole context of Breslov, with the context of Rabbi Nachman, with the context of Reb Nosson and what they went through. Do you know they put a hit on Reb Nosson's life? They put a hit on his life and they killed someone. They killed the butcher who was called Reb Nosson. They got the wrong guy. Imagine that. We think today the machlokes is but Baba 45 and Baba 40 this and whatever. It's cute, it's sweet, and it's terrible, and it's sweet. It's a joke. The machlokes, they were killing people. They were Shem Yishmar Aleinu. So what they went through, and it's like it's a pella. Like what? Over what? Like what? For why? For what reason? For what reason? V'kama Yegias Yaga, and how much he toiled. V'kama Trachis Tarach, and how he was bothered. V'kama Alafim Tanisim V'Havsakas, and how many thousands of fasts. V'kama Havsakas Shlemis Mishabbos V'Shabbos, and how many times Rabbi Nachman fasted the whole entire week long, as he did many, many times. V'kama Mini Sigufim Sigev, and how many different personal afflictions he afflicted himself. V'kama Shanim Espoided is how many years he spent alone. Uparash Atzmi, v'kol many precious that he removed himself in all types of ways, many taivas, from all of the different taivas, many kedushas, and he sanctified himself in all ways. But even more than that, he strengthened himself in holiness and awesome holiness through his connection to Eretz Yisrael. He sacrificed his whole life. And he traveled there, and the time during a war when Napoleon was conquering Eretz Yisrael. When the mamish in the middle of war, he escaped on a French warship. Not getting into the whole thing. He had to climb over a wall in Tveria, and he jumped onto a ship, and it was a French warship, and he hid for weeks and weeks without food and water. Crazy stories, crazy stories. You can look it all up and read all about it. And how many challenges the Adu love that were cast upon him along that way. Hashem Tzadik Yivchan. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tests the tzaddik, kapeshtani hazeh v'chulu ki yikifu alav, az ba'oisei hayam and kama min itzaris v'sabkanos, tchufas u'ritzufas, how many challenges he had, how many dangers he had. Tzaras hadever, there was pestilence, Rachmana litzlan, shaya az ba'oisei Medina, that was in Tveria and Tzvat at that time. V'tekev v'rash ha-milchama, and the war itself, shalei b'tuch mechayem yoyim echad, they couldn't rely that they were going to stay alive for one day. Ushar many hisrapkois, kashas begufa nefesh u'mammon, and all different kinds of difficulties in their body, in their soul, in their money, asher iyaf shalavar b'ksav, that it's impossible to describe. But Hashem Yisbarach barachmo, but Hashem in His great mercy, Nosson lekoyach barzel, gave him a will of iron, Lizbal kol zeh, to manage to be okay. And to overcome that a person can't even imagine doing this. He made it in peace and he got there. And he left and he came back without being hurt, like it says by the Kohen Gadol, in and out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and he merited there walking 4 Amos. He merited there whatever he revealed, whatever he merited, be'eskalia, both in revealed, u'be'eskasia. We'll just finish to the end of the paragraph quickly. Aside from what is hidden, what he merited, hidden things, but we ourselves saw. God was with him. I mentioned this in the first day. The Torah that he revealed after he came back, was infinitely loftier than the Torah that he revealed before. So that even before that it woke up our world. It was always wondrous. But like earth, like heaven is higher than earth. It was even higher. The entire Sefer, I'm just going to say it outside, is from the Torahs of after Eretz Yisrael. He says aside, a few, 2 or 3 or a few in the middle, from Siman Ayin Gimel to Siman Kuf Yudal, which is from before Eretz Yisrael, and you yourself will be able to see the difference. Yasher Koyach, we're making great headway. As Yisrael Hashem, Monday, we'll be starting the Sefer Torah Aleph.
אני הבן ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני